Hi folks, this is the SIG Docs weekly meeting on the 20th of April 2021. We're following the Cloud Native Computing Foundation Code of Conduct, so be excellent to each other, people. And I'm going to share my screen with the agenda when I find it. Cool. Okay, so on this call, do we have any new contributors? I recognize a lot of faces here. Anyone new? Don't think so. I'll run through some details. This week's PR Wrangler is KB Hawkey. Next week's PR Wrangler is Brad Topol. Let's move on to the agenda and talk about anything from the upcoming release 1.22. Any update there? Okay. I'm not hearing an update. This could be a quick meeting. Or my sound's off, one of the two. Hey, Evie.
Hey.
Let's move on to talk about the blog. There was an action on me to look for some people to join the blog team as sort of informal or even formal reviewers. It would be great to have people mosey on over to SIG Docs blog in Slack or otherwise contribute to the editorial side of blogging. At the moment, we have a number of people who are proposing blog articles and the reviews are getting backlogged. And we could definitely use more people, especially at the early stage of their sort of contributor ladder, to help out with reviews. Anything on that people want to talk about?
For the blog reviewers, are you looking, did you say you were looking for people to help like copy editing reviews and not doing tech reviews? Is that sort of the more people you're looking for?
So both of those kinds of contribution are valuable. Reviewing for technical accuracy is useful, and reviewing for style, tone, correct use of English, grammar and spelling, those kinds of feedback as well. We do have, blog articles are often improved by drawings and illustrations. So helping people blog in line with the Kubernetes style for that is also helpful. Any of those contributions are welcome. I think there's very few that aren't.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Tell your friends and colleagues.
Sorry to interrupt. I took a look at the Slack channel, and I was trying to find sort of ways to help. Things like meeting minutes and whatnot. Is there a central sort of spot that is like here's a list of things that we're needing help with, go at it, or is it just go into the chat and say, hey, I'm here?
I think that the blog team I think is really short. In terms of active blog reviewers, I think you're looking at 2 or 3 people who are busy. I recently joined as a reviewer. I would count myself, I'm afraid, as busy. However, being a blog reviewer and having the privileges to add LGTM on a review is different from being able to provide feedback to people who've written an article. So those informal reviews, I think, are super useful. And that's true across kind of the Kubernetes org in general, whether it's a code review and you're not a reviewer for that area of code. If you can provide constructive feedback to help someone get their code better, you're helping. If you can help someone write a blog article that's ready to be approved by a blog approver, you've moved things along, you've helped. And that kind of informal early contribution by people is exactly the sort of thing I want to encourage.
I realize my camera's not on, but I'm nodding. Thank you.
Okay. If you're not sure what that might look like, essentially, you're doing a review, just maybe call out that you're not speaking for the blog team formally. You're just trying to provide constructive feedback, and actually they have misspelled Kubernetes on line 1. and they'll need to fix that. You can tell that kind of thing. It can be a small detail, it can be a big detail, it can be an offer to say, let's take this back to Google Docs. When people want to blog, they might come in via Slack and say, hey, I want to blog something, but I'm not up on GitHub and Markdown and Hugo, these aren't my things. And they want to collaborate on a Google Doc. Well, you're welcome to join in. Like, you can collaborate on that. You could be a co-author, you can do copy editing. Those ways to contribute, they're all fine too. I wonder, Evie, do you have anything you want to add on that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So do you just, I'm not sure exactly, I just joined the channel last week. I'd be happy to edit some blogs. Do you just, I don't know, do they just show up as pull requests somewhere? I haven't really looked at it yet.
Sure. So let me explain that bit. We have labeling across the Kubernetes organization done by a robot called, well, a family of automation called Prow. And the label that's used for blog articles is area/blog. Let me put a note in that. So if you're familiar enough with GitHub to filter issues and you search for open PRs, they're not merged, they're not closed, and they have area/blog as a label, those are the ones. I'd emphasize it's really helpful to find people who are not comfortable with GitHub and want to propose, wording via Google Docs or whatever, because you can't find those from whatever. I mean, that is from like Slack channels, and that is from informal conversations from people saying, hey, I'm new here, what do I do? And maybe that will be the only message they send. So anyone who can follow up with that is helping out loads. But for the meat and drink of blog reviewing, it is find that label, find the stuff that doesn't have any kind of review on it yet, and explain what kind of review you're doing. Are you doing a content review? Are you doing a technical review? Are you trying to cover both cases? Are you reviewing against content guidelines? Because we wouldn't accept something that's overtly marketing a particular commercial organization, and you can explain why and say, hey, this won't be okay. This is why. Here's the guidelines, which I will dig out. I will dig out the blog guidelines.
That's really helpful. I'd be glad to help with that too. So I'll start looking for stuff this week. Thanks.
Well, thanks to everyone who's whatever your capacity to help, it's appreciated. Any more on blog contributions, or would we like to move on?
Hey, real quick. So there was the blog meeting, I think, on Thursday that seems to have disappeared from my calendar. So I'll just mention that in the Slack.
Sure. I'm not sure how many people would be at the blog meeting.
I see.
I've heard, like, this is just my take on things, that there are Alcoholics Anonymous meetings where they're on the calendar and no one's going, and then one person turns up and a second person turns up. I think it might have to be that kind of building things up again.
Okay.
I'm really keen that whatever we've had before, like, let's not throw that away, but let's not dwell too strongly on we've got this rigor and these processes, we must follow them. I think it's more important that we find a way to build up an active blog team and get that going. We do have a couple of people who are like blog approvers and so on. Bob Killen has been doing sterling work, but is also, I think, a very over committed resource in this area. So yeah, like, the people who are doing blog reviews, we can work out what meetings we want, and I think we've got amongst the active contributors, like, this is a community-led activity. I think we can come up with weekly meetings or fortnightly meetings that suit the people who want them.
Great, thanks.
Right, I'm going to move on. That was super useful. And like I say, I think SIG Docs would really appreciate help in that area. Let's talk about localization. Would anyone like to do an update about localization for this week's meeting? Guess there's nothing to add there. Right. Moving on. We're also, the list of issues and PRs for discussion today is empty. If you do have anything to bring up, you can mention that on Kubernetes Slack. And KB Hawkey, Karen Bradshaw, has mentioned that she's reviewing this week as the designated PR wrangler. So someone you can particularly reach out to if you've got problems with a pull request that you want to get reviewed or understand how things are going. And we have one discussion item. Oh, two discussion. Oh, hang on. I see that there's I don't know who's added, but there's a PR there. I'm thinking
I added that. Sure.
Okay. I'm going to move that, Chris, into issues and PRs.
Okay.
I think we'll have time to pick that up and then move on to the discussion.
Okay.
So I haven't looked at this PR. Chris, would you like to speak about that?
You have reviewed it, and I've responded.
Okay.
Yes, and I have responded to all your issues and all your comments and Ray's comments. And I said, and my question is, how do we move forward? Can I get it merged? And Ray suggested that maybe it needed a wider review because it is kind of a big topic, and I just kind of took it on myself. My question is, do you want another technical reviewer of it, or is this something that can just go forward and get merged? And do other people have, opinions about this? So I can explain.
I think I'm going to reply with a question, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the purpose of this pull request?
The purpose is that someone goes to that page, and in fact, there was someone that actually entered an issue about this. They go to the page and it says production environment, and it doesn't. It only it has like 4 links as it currently stands to kind of random topics on production, on setting up a production environment. So I thought, I was reading some of the survey that you guys took a couple years ago, and people said they sometimes had trouble understanding conceptually what was going on. So I started looking throughout the whole doc set. There's some great content on how to set up production quality Kubernetes environments. They're in pieces all over the place. So I thought I would do is I would say, from a conceptual standpoint, what is it that you need to do? And let's see. So here's the Netlify. If people just want to read it, it's all. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the preview in Netlify. Yeah.
Yeah, the preview. So I'll put it in the chat if anyone's interested. And basically, what I said was, okay, I talked to some experts, people I know that have set up Kubernetes and production environments from scratch, and basically said, what are the things you need to think about going into it? And the main things they said that are going to be different from just a regular your own development environment or your personal learning environment is availability. It's something that if it has to be there, what do you have to do to make sure it's available? Scale, if it's something that's going to grow very large, how do you plan for that? And then security and access management. Are there going to be a lot of people hitting this thing? What are the security issues you need to do? And I said, basically take that lens and then look through how to apply that when you go to set up your Kubernetes production environment. And then I split the rest of it into basically 4 sections: setting up a control plane, setting up worker nodes, setting up user access, and then configuring your workload resources. And all those are things you need to consider going to production environment. So I've talked to a bunch of experts about this. I've been doing it myself for a while, as a writer. So I just went ahead and wrote it. So if you think that there's more that needs to be done here, I'd be glad to maybe bring it. If you want another technical kind of reviewer for it, I'd be glad to do that. Bring someone else in and get help on it. But for the most part, it kind of says what I wanted to say, and then I incorporated all the issues like that you had and that Ray had. You remember it now, right, Tim?
Yeah, I do. I saw Abigail. I'm pretty sure you had your hand up, so I'm going to hand the floor to you.
I did, and this might have already been covered in your issue, the conversations in the issue. I didn't go through all of those in the PR, but this was like an index file that opened that had the list for the subpages. Is that something that is still there? Like, is the menu like the same that you could get to the production items, the items that were under? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yes. I just deleted that file and I incorporated those 4 links into this page. So they
Okay.
are in there in the context of where they're interesting. I also incorporated all the links from the best practices page because I looked at those and really none of them really applied to learning environments. They were all best practices for if you're doing a production kind of environment. So I got all those links in the context of the text on this page as well. I mean, we could add the links to the bottom if you want to do that, if you're afraid people would, would miss them, but they are all in the context of the text.
Okay, I was just wondering, in the case of how it is done in other pages, like the underscore index.markdown file, I think has like a template that pulls in the links, and that's why it was just the 4 links that were pulled in from the subpages within that folder. And
Yep.
I'm just raising it because I didn't know if that would cause issues, not really a real issue, but if that would cause any problems if we do want to change that template going forward, or like, you know what I
So,
mean?
I'm going to talk about the technology here a little bit because
Okay.
our theme, we use Doxy, lets you customize whether you want automatic indexing for subpages or whether you want to provide your own. And we both of those approaches are fine. Some sections deliberately say, I am the index. Someone has written an index, so don't add the same thing again. And other pages are, for example, the task section currently is entirely automatically generated from the pages within it. And that's fine too. It means that when people define new tasks, we don't need to go and also change the index. I think the convention, so that's the technology. I think the convention is that when you have a more narrative page like this, that either in the page overview, this PR overview is really short, it's 2 sentences. We highlight people to signpost people to the most salient links early on, or we have a what's next section following our conventions, and we do that. So if you want to, Abigail, you could add that feedback as a question to the PR. And I think I encourage you to do so because I think it's good feedback, and it'd be good to have that down.
Sure, I can add that. Thank you. My question, I guess, was more the technology. So thanks for letting me go on a tangent there. I think the content is, I'm sure, very great. I was just wondering how it would fit with the rest of the conventions of the website.
I'm also going to talk a little bit about how I review. And the big question I have the two questions I have in my mind are, well, 3. Right. 2 main questions are, is the new content factually accurate? Are we introducing regressions by there's new content, we're adding it, and it's technically wrong, it's misleading? Like, we should not merge those PRs. There are some exceptions when I'd merge something like that and then immediately log an issue saying, okay, good first issue. We need to go and fix this this inaccurate content that I've just merged for an exceptional reason. The next question is the revised page better than the old page overall? So long as there are no technical inaccuracies, when I'm reviewing, the question I'm asking is, does this bring joy to your documentation? Does this make the docs a better place? And it doesn't mean that the new page has to be perfect. It has to be better. The perfect is the enemy of the merged. And then there is a third paperwork type question. We must make sure that we follow the content guide. So no linking to third-party commercial interests, no breaching CNCF guidelines. Well, don't do that. So long as those sort of paperwork checkboxes that are important are covered, there are no technical inaccuracies, and we are making improvement, then I'm minded to approve things. I'm also going to say that I don't think I've got the bandwidth to review this one, and I would be delighted to hear that someone on this call is willing to pick up and see if they can add an LGTM to this page, because that would move it forward. So if anyone is on this call and is happy to review it either informally, add an informal review. So our convention for that is that you review with the capital letters LGTM, or the words "looks good to me." Or if you're a reviewer for the English localization, then it's the proud command /LGTM, which is meaningful and will add a label LGTM to the issue. Either of those things will move it on. Does someone want to step forward on that one?
Since I had questions on it, I can take a pass at it. I'm not an official reviewer though, but I can take a pass and do an editorial
love
review.
Informal reviews.
Okay.
I mean, I started here by, like my journey towards being currently a technical lead was that I started by doing informal reviews on PRs, and people said, well, these are useful, please do more of them. And so people who can review and help move things on, we want you to do that. It's contribution that we entirely value. So thank you very much, Abigail.
So if I could add just a little more context to it as well. I thought hard before I did this to make sure I kept all like third-party vendor direct information out of it that says, oh, by the way, you don't have to do any of this, AWS or Google or Azure, they can do this better. I kept all that stuff out. I did have a section at first that said, here's what someone else could do for you. I had a rather long section about, well, you can go serverless. You don't even have to set up a server. You can have them do the control nodes. You can have them do worker nodes. Instead, at your suggestion, Tim, actually, I threw out that whole section. I will eventually present it as a blog and just put a little bullet list saying, hey, you can consider that someone else can do these. It's just a short bullet list right near the beginning. But everything else in here is meant to be non-controversial. It's really just meant to give an entry point to lots of stuff throughout the documentation that's already there that people maybe can't find on their own. So this sort of gives them a context and gives them sort of conceptual entry into the content. So that's my main point. It's not to push any one way of doing things, but really to just give them an entry point into a lot of things. It was kind of random the way it was before, with kind of 4 random links. So that's what I had in mind. I would love to do whatever I can to help get it merged.
I think it could use another, pass of review by someone who's not you, Chris, because that's needed. But sure. your competitors, the thing we're comparing it with, the existing page, is not great. So I think you've got an easy journey to convincing people that you've made an improvement here. And you should be confident that time and resources permitting, we will get this through.
Sounds great. Okay, well, I'll look for your input, Abigail. I appreciate that.
And remember, Chris, so KB Hawkey has picked up the PR wrangling for this week. So if things, if you do want advice on how do I get my PR merged, or hey, this has got an informal review, can you help move it forward? There is always every week a person from SIG Docs who has put themselves down as in the chair for that week.
Okay,
and that
great.
link in the agenda that I'm screen sharing is to the website wiki, and you can find who the current PR wrangler is. So that's a useful thing if you've got a PR that's problematic. You want some advice. That the PR wrangler is someone that we want you to be able to turn to.
Great, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
We've talked about a review, and one of the reasons I've been happy to talk a bit about that in a bit more detail is because I think it's useful for people who aren't doing reviews to understand what's involved and how they can get help and so on. Has anyone had any questions on that that's popped into their mind while that's been discussed?
I guess I have a question about the difference between informal and formal reviewers, and how you said you just started by going and reviewing things, and then you eventually became a more
Sure.
Just give me some words around that. I'd appreciate it.
So on GitHub, all pull requests, this in a public repository, this is a public repository. We're not like using GitHub Enterprise or private repos. This is open source public development. Anyone can join GitHub and get a GitHub username and can comment on a pull request and propose change. Anyone. We'd like you to follow the CNCF code of conduct, otherwise we will, ban you. But so long as you're not overtly abusive or otherwise a problem, we value your feedback. And so I can go and look at any bit of Kubernetes code, or indeed some other CNCF project, like, I don't know, CNAB. I can go and look at their pull requests, and I can go and put a comment saying, yeah, this looks all right to me. We should merge this. That's an informal review. I can go and look at someone's proposed change to another bit of Kubernetes or anywhere on the web, on GitHub, and say, you know what, you've misspelled the name of the project. Yeah, you'll need to fix that. And I can use the suggestions API to say, hey, here is what you've written but spelled correctly as a comment. That's a review. Like if you provide a comment on a PR and you fix someone's typo and you give them a suggestion using the suggestions feature in GitHub, you've done an informal review. And you can go, the next level up on that is you can go through in a structured way and say, hey, this is good. This is good. I like that. You might want to think about this wording. Here's a markdown error that I've spotted. That's good. And, and give it, that's a review. It's informal because your review doesn't count towards the process of getting it merged. It's meaningful to the person who wrote it. I hope they'll really appreciate the feedback. But before we make changes to the live website, we need the automation to spot that a person designated as a reviewer has, done the automation steps to get the LGTM label on there. So LGTM labels are around checking that the content is technically accurate and is kind of correctly spelled, valid markdown, and so on. And if someone's documenting a technical feature, we SIG Docs might go and ask a different part of Kubernetes contributors to say, like maybe it's a networking change. We might ask the network special interest group and say, hey, this is your area. Please would someone from the network special interest group check that this is technically accurate and add the LGTM label to this pull request. And we'll say that we're not going to move things forward until that's happened because it's essential. We don't want to mislead people. And there's a second check, and this is done by SIG Docs people, nothing to do with other SIGs and what have you, which is approval. So Irvi and I are approvers. Our job there is to look at the description of the pull request and understand the intent of what someone's doing. So the description might be add a new page around new style network policies. Okay, that intent makes sense. Someone else has reviewed the accuracy of the change in terms of technical correctness and wording and so on. I approve. And once approval happens and LGTM is in place, automation does the boring work of merging it and publishing it to the website. A little detail I'll mention is that sometimes if I'm confident in the standing of a reviewer and I'm approving, I will look just at the first page. I won't look at the markdown changes at all because it's got an LGTM, and my job there is to look as an approver at the PR description. So I've had changes where I'm approving. I haven't looked at the code. I've been confident that CI has tested it won't break the website. I'm confident that another person has added LGTM and that they meant it. And I'm confident that the PR description makes sense as an improvement to make / approve. So there are two slightly different roles there. We never want to have the ability, give someone the ability to change their website on their own. So I can't change the website, even as a tech lead. Someone else has to check my work. But once all that's happened, your change is on the live website.
Nice, thanks. Appreciate that.
Cool. Well, let's move on to the discussion part and talk about, this was carried over from last week. I'm not sure which person brought this up, but control plane versus control plane node in documentation.
Yeah, I brought this up last week.
Okay, Christopher.
I have clarification on it. I looked at the diagram and some of the concepts, or in the concept section, so I'm all good with it.
Cool. Well, I mean, there's room to carry on, but it sounds like you're all sorted.
Yes.
Cool. I will loop back and say, Steve, we asked earlier in the meeting if there are any new contributors. I don't know if you've joined a SIG Docs meeting before, but if you're new here, please feel welcome to introduce yourself. Oh, and I would add that if you're unable to speak but want to introduce via the chat because you're muted or don't have audio, an introduction via the chat is also fine if you want to. Okay. Any more topics for this week's meeting?
Yeah, me. Sorry, reacted really late to the update for 1.22 release.
Okay.
So currently, we are in week 0, let's say, and I'm not sure yet what the release cadence will be for this. If it will be the same or if it will be a new one three times per year. The discussion is not definitive yet, or at least it wasn't until I checked it last time. I am currently in the process of picking up the shadows, and week 1 will be next week, basically. So that's when we'll slowly start to ramp up things.
Okay, so you're nominating, what was the word for, you're selecting docs shadows?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And you start in earnest next week?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Victor. Well, I guess that was the last item. So thanks, everyone. I'll give you a few minutes of your Tuesday back. Thank you very much. That's a SIG meeting.
Thank you. Bye.